starting, so it's probably actually already started. Hey folks, Carrie here. Full Tilt Friday, going out a little bit early. I have a very dear and special friend here with me today, so it's a little bit different. You also notice the background is a bit different. This is my friend Doug Stout, who is also part of, well, he is Ice Axe TV. He lives in Lake Tahoe, which is where we are, on his porch looking out at Lake Tahoe. This last weekend, there was a not Burning Man event in the desert, and we went out to the desert, and we have been together for a little while. Thus, we are kind of in each other's bubble at the moment. But I wanted to today focus on something very specific because Doug is a primary example of what I will call embracing an unconventional life. So we'll talk a little bit about that, and I'll find out how he's done that. But I want him to share a little bit with you first about exactly what he does. So, Doug, first of all, I've known Doug how long?
30 years, over 30 years.
30 years.
It's amazing to reconnect with him in different places, whether it's New York, Los Angeles, Europe, wherever. We always seem to sort of reconnect on the world, and it's always great to see you. And you always have an interesting place that you're going to and interesting things to do. So it's always great to hang out with you, and it's been an amazing 5 or 6 days to see you and see your friends and meet some new people, and super fun.
Doug is being very kind, and the things that I do pale in comparison to what he does. So I knew him originally as a climbing partner, and we used to go out a lot and hang out together in LA, and we'd be up in the crags, and we knew each other in New York. But when I say he lives an unconventional life, I am dead 100% sure that no one else in the world lives exactly like he does. So, Ice Axe TV, can you tell me a little bit about the primary mission that you have with Ice Axe TV and what you do?
Yeah, so Ice Axe is a company that I formed over 20 years ago, and it really started as a dream. It was a dream to go climb the highest peak in Antarctica and do the first ski and snowboard descent.
And that first highest peak is called?
Vincent Massif, and it's 16,077 feet, but 4,800 meters. But it was a dream back then. It hadn't been skied and snowboarded before, and I put a small team together and put this productive growth of trying to fulfill this dream for almost 6 months or a year in advance before I went and did it, and what I didn't realize that I would fall in love with Antarctica.
So I'm going to, in the interest of keeping this brief, because we will talk for 3 hours, I'm going to sometimes guide a little bit. So how many times have you been now to the South Pole?
40. I've been to the South Pole 18 times, but I've been to Antarctica 49 times.
Nobody goes to Antarctica 49 times, or the South Pole 18, and the North Pole for good measure?
17 times to the North Pole, but tons in the Arctic and Greenland and Iceland and Svalbard numerous times.
So you're talking about a guy here who has been 60 plus times to both polar regions. That's pretty unprecedented. So Ice Axe TV, you also bring people there, correct? So how does that work?
Yeah, so, well, it really started as my own ambition to go and sort of beat my chest, and I quickly learned that that wasn't really the way to go. We had to try to find some sort of purpose, and I do some mentoring, which is a whole nother story, and I think expeditions with purpose is really the key to that. But I was raising money for charity, or I'd take a handicapped person, or whatever that might look like. It was really important to me because I needed a purpose for every step that I'm going to, whether I'm going to the pole or going climbing a mountain. I needed to be raising money for charity, or I had the clients raising money for charity. So it's turned into more of now a client thing, and I tell them that they need to raise money for a charity of their choice. If they don't have one, they can raise money for my charity.
If you hadn't guessed, a lot of Doug's clients have very deep pockets, and he also is interested in making an impact. So he's done a lot of work with climate change, education,
philanthropic stuff. Education is the key, I think, for our survival on this planet, is really to educate our youth, is really, really important. But say 3 years ago, I took a handicapped guy in a wheelchair from the coast of Antarctica to the geographic South Pole, and that was over 500 miles in 24 days, and we raised over €1 million for childhood cancer.
What was the physical disability that he had?
He had cancer in his spinal cord and had it removed when he was 11. He was 30 years old at the time, and just I was carrying a 400-pound sled up 3,000 meters or 9,000 feet, and I'd be like sweating, and I'd look behind me and I'd see this animal pushing with ski poles up a sit ski.
And he means animal in a good way.
Yeah.
Like people sometimes call you a beast. That's a
Yeah.
compliment, by the way.
Yeah, but anyway, it was pretty impressive to watch him push over 500 miles to the South Pole, and gives me
Okay.
a lot of perspective.
So the unconventional life, what I'm saying that he does is gets to go to places that are very near and dear to your heart, that are meaningful in a number of different ways. And you get to go there repeatedly, and you are essentially paid. You've created a life where you are paid to do what people dream of doing and pay lots of money to do. And it started with you having this experience and vision to go up Vincent Massif and then come down, and then how have you rolled that into how because it'd be pretty easy to be like, okay, I've done that, now I'm going to go and work for a sporting brand. Why not?
I think it happened pretty organically. I found that I had a skill of not only cooperating and teaching people how to get to places, but also had those skills myself. And a lot of it's a little bit psychological as well. So, and it's not just taking people to the poles, it's also taking skiers. I'm a skier and I love skiing, and so I take people skiing around the world in remote places, whether it's Morocco or Kashmir or Antarctica or Svalbard. I love going places where you're skiing to wildlife, and I think that's what's really special.
He's got ski trips to Morocco coming up in February,
Hopefully.
by the way. Yeah,
hoping
and maybe
that will happen.
and next year I think there are trips to both Antarctica
Yep.
on a boat, and maybe
We'll do South Pole and North Pole next year in April, North Pole, and next November is South Pole.
you can find information, by the way, iceaxe.tv, is that right? Iceaxe.tv if you're looking for that sort of thing. Okay, so again, this is not conventional, this is not normal. This isn't like, I have this concept of a unicorn being a person or business who is capable of creating a fantasy existence. Like, you live the life that people dream of. Like when I first, you met me when I was a motorcycle journalist.
Yeah.
I got a job writing for Motorcycle Magazine, which is a extremely tough thing to get. But you forego some things, you take some chances. So what are the things you had to either forego, or the chances you had to take to make it work?
Well, I think I've always worked for myself. I don't know if I could sit in a cubicle and work for somebody, so it's always been reinventing myself, and I think that's what was the key. And I think not everybody has that. It has that passion and drive and desire. And I think what I did is I'd come up with something else and I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up. So it's it's still evolving. It's still, will I be taking people to the South Pole in 5 years from now? Probably not, but I'm mentoring a couple of youth to be able to pass on that baton and pass that torch. But I think the key is just finding something that you love doing and working on a productive growth series to try to achieve those goals. And I think anybody can do it. And I talk to a lot of kids and students around the world, and that's really my messaging, is really you can do anything you want to do. And I'm a perfect example. I wasn't the best athlete, I wasn't the smartest guy in the classroom, but I think if you really set your mind to it, you can do. The mind's a very powerful thing, and so I think you can really do anything you want.
So this is kind of the mental side of things, which Doug is, I think, maybe glossing over it a little bit, how much commitment it takes to diverge from the path that's worn in by countless people in front of you. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I read the books of the turn of the century explorers, but I really didn't have a guidebook to do that. Correct. I mean, I sort of had to learn in the series.
There's no how to be explorer for
Yeah.
dummies book advertised right now.
Right.
So,
Although I do teach polar training courses, so if you're interested in taking a polar training course, you can sign up on the website, and we teach like 20 years of experience, and that's that's a lot of winter camping. It's not like you want to go to the North or South Pole, but it gives you a lot of background and where to put the sleds to keep the polar bears away.
so he's saying that mentally anybody can do it if they're focused on something, driven, and can continue to relentlessly move forward, kind of like an ultra, until you get to where you want to be. So there are obstacles. There are struggles and challenges.
Yes.
So what are some of your harder struggles and challenges and obstacles into
Well,
creating what you've done?
Some people say I'm a professional sufferer, but I think just really dotting the I's and crossing the T's is really important, and being organized. And I think that leads success in cold weather environments where the temperatures are minus 40 or colder. So you really have to be organized. You have to all the color coded stuff sacks where all your gear is. You really have to know where things are, and you just have to be really
Obstacles.
civilized.
Tell me obstacles. You're telling me how you do it. What have you hit that's like, okay, how am I going to deal with this? Like COVID is a great example.
Yeah.
My business is taking a massive hit. Your business right now?
Yeah, it's taken a hit too, but we have to learn how to pivot. I think the smart people out there will learn how to adjust, whether you're doing online stuff or you're doing domestic stuff.
So what are some of the hurdles, the challenges,
Well,
the things?
all my business is international travel. So
Okay.
that's one of the hurdles that we're not able to fly anywhere. So we're having to figure out how we do something.
This is the current one. Give me something that's like, oh, how are we dealing with that you can get through?
Well, 2 years ago we were, there was a geopolitical thing up at the North Pole, and we weren't able to go to the North Pole. So we were waiting to do that. We tried to get other planes and stuff like that.
Did the trip eventually work?
No, it hasn't.
Still not.
So you run into stuff like that in life all the time, and you
Yeah.
just have to rebound and come back stronger.
That's the DNF. The did not finish.
finish,
Yeah.
And I have no problem even climbing mountains with mitigating avalanches and learning your instinct to be able to go and do something. I have no problem walking away. I don't have a death wish as I'm going off into these places. It's really important that we come back, and we have families and friends. And
So clearly the exploration and the suffering in cold environments is something that you are both good at and you have embraced, thus your status as an unconventional life liver and therefore unicorn of the highest order. I'm serious. So if someone is thinking, sure, Doug can do it. Look at the size of this guy, man. Like Atlas. If Doug can do it, other people can do it, but they're going to have other hurdles, obstacles, challenges to deal with. One of the things you said at the beginning was you identified your passion.
yes.
So did that just come naturally, or did you?
I think I've always been passionate about stuff, whether it's, playing soccer. I would juggle the ball in the garage at 11 o'clock at night. I think even for my training, I work all day and I don't have time at night, so I'll put a headlamp on and pull tires up to the top of Squaw for 4 or 5 hours. So
And why would you pull tires?
Well, you want to simulate the same activity that you're going to be doing for a month or 2 months. So
Pulling tires?
Yeah, well, you're pulling the weight, and it's simulating the same activity that you'll be doing.
So you basically wear a waist harness. You
Correct.
you attach a tire to 1 or 2 anchor points,
Sometimes 2 tires. Yeah,
Two tires.
two anchor points.
and then you just drag.
Correct. And it doesn't have to be fast. It just has to be really regimented and feel a little bit of friction. So it's sort of boring, but you can listen to a book on tape or just enjoy the nature and the stars and that kind of thing with the headlamp.
Is there any? Give me a highlight experience or two where you brought somebody in to experience their dream trip, and what happened?
I was trying to do Shackleton's intended trip of 1914 through 1916, the Imperial Transantarctic Expedition, and I had 2 clients, and one of them was talking and doing interviews and had parties before he left, and when he got there, he was just really scared, and within 4 or 5 days he wanted to be evacuated, and that was just me trying to say, hey, we can do this, we're making this, that's trying to convince him that he can still do it, and just he sort of had his mind made up and he was going to be pulled out. So that's a failure in my book, because he signed up to do something, we knew we were going to go do this, and then I wasn't able to convince him.
So Shackleton, they've got a book called Endurance, which is one of the best books, adventure books ever written. This guy, what year?
1814 through 1816. 1914 through 1916.
They
So
get on a
100
boat.
years ago.
They put an advertisement in the paper that said something along, sailors or adventurers needed for a trip, wildly hazardous, good chance you won't return.
Yeah.
And tons of people want to go. Then they ended up getting stuck in the ice on the Weddell Sea for more than a year until their boat was crushed by the ice. They were able to take 2 lifeboats off, put them onto the ice, survive for a little while, sail one of those boats then to South Georgia, I believe.
Yep.
Or no, Elephant Island. Elephant Island, then he made it to South Georgia on another boat and hiked across the island, a marathon in the terrain that just, and then showed up a year and a half later after he was missing.
22 months.
22 months later, and it's the best book ever. So
And
you were trying to get the original trip.
Right. So the guys ended up eating penguin and seal for 22 months, but it was an amazing story. Alfred Lansing is the author, and you should definitely read it. But I wanted to go and recreate the journey that he intended to do and be dropped off because he was going to winter over.
Yeah.
And the circumference of Antarctica expands, and so the ice crushed his boat, and so he ended up getting dropped to Elephant Island and then sailing the James Caird to South Georgia. So you told a lot of the story, but anyway, it's so I wanted to redo the journey that he intended to do, and that's what we did, and it took 47 days. It was 737 miles unsupported. So I do think Shackleton would have been able to do it. He would have had dogs to be able to take him. We were just doing what's called man hauling, where we were hauling, our human bodies were hauling sleds. I fell into 4 different crevasses on that journey.
Whoa.
Up to my chest. And you know, glaciation is usually.
Are you tied to anybody, or you're alone?
No, it wasn't tied to my sled, or I was out actually scouting about 100 meters. And what happens is when you look at glaciers, they're very uniform, and you can usually tell the direction in which they're going. And what happens, it snows over the winter, and there's snow bridges. Some of these bridges are sagging, but you know, it looked like a white sheet. So I was like, I didn't see anything, but there was several glaciers coming in, the Recovery Glacier and Shackleton Range right there were coming in from different angles. So there was just a hodgepodge of crevasses going all directions. So I would like reconnoiter and probing the whole time and then falling in.
That's how you fall into a crevasse.
Yeah, fell onto your chest, you catch yourself, and my skis are dangling, and was able to pull myself out with the tips of my poles, and then I remember looking back at my friend Richard, you know, who's with me, and he was just sort of like deer in the headlights, like, oh my God, I almost lost my guide, you know, to take me. But we ended up going a different route, and we made it, and it was an amazing trip.
So the guy who wanted to pull out 4 days later continued on for 47 days?
We had to go back and find a place to actually, for the plane to land, and he ended up leaving.
And then who did the trip? You and...
Me and just the other guy, the Irishman. Which happened to be ironic because that's Shackleton was Irish, so it was good. And it was really interesting going with him for 47 days. I didn't really talk to him that much because we would ski really hard and the wind is blowing and you don't really have time to even have a conversation. You're just shoving food and fuel in your system as quickly as possible, and then 5 minutes later your hands are cold and you want to get going. And I would pull ahead at the end to set up the tent, and he'd be behind and he would be completely just knackered, like almost falling over. He'd get in the tent, I'd set it up, he'd get in the tent, and by the time I got the stove and everything in, he'd be asleep. I'd be cooking food, I'd wake him up and say, eat. He would eat, and then we'd...
I'm going to tell you a quick aside, because we were having a chat earlier today, and I'm here with a couple other friends who are at Burning Man with us, my friends Morgan's and my friend Doug behind the camera. Thank you, Doug. And Doug asked Doug, they're both Doug Silton and Doug Stout, well, where do you go to work? And he looked a little bit confused, and I just said, the North Pole. And he's like, that's probably actually true. So,
Yep.
Not very many people have that office. Okay, Unconventional Life, truly, like, inspirational to me as well, just watching what you've done. So
Thank you.
yeah, you're welcome. I admire you, man.
Well, I love hanging out with you. It's always a blast, and it's always interesting and beautiful conversation, and it's always a pleasure.
Love you, man.
Love you too, brother.
All right, Carrie out. Oh, couple quick things. Instagram, Carrie Ward, check it out. A lot of these adventures that I post are there. Also, we have a Strava account. Actually, at the Playa yesterday, I have an interesting Strava art piece that I just put up. And Patreon, if you're interested in supporting content like this in a more meaningful level, I will put those links in the description, or you can just search for it under my name, Kerry Ward. Doug, you want to share?
Yeah, I'm on. My follow handle is Iceman Doug, and you can also look at Ice Axe Expeditions as well.
All right. Thanks, people.